All right. We are back for a midweek segment here on the A to Z Sports Big Orange podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Now, what would be worthy of a midweek show like this? Of course, we love to do this when big things happen for Tennessee, big wins, big recruiting gets, whatever it might be. This is really none of those things, but this is absolutely midweek podcast worthy. The little tyrant, the short little demon down in Tuscaloosa finally announced his retirement. Nick Saban is retiring from college football and will no longer be the coach at Alabama. Praise be to all things on high. I can't believe this day actually came. We no longer have to deal with Saban. And also praise be to the fact that the Tennessee Volunteers beat this guy finally before he actually checked out. Oh, what a day it was, Zach. What's up, man?
Yeah, what a whirlwind 18 to 24 hours, really
Ooh.
48 hours of news cycles from your boy Mike Vrabel getting fired. I know you were happy about that and talking about it for a few months now to Pete Carroll surprisingly,
Yeah.
getting kind of pushed out at Seattle, Nick Saban and then waking up this morning with Bill Belichick, which we kind of expected the Belichick news, but just some big names there with Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, and Belichick. No longer going to be in their respective jobs. And in Belichick's case, he hopes to continue on. But Saban, I mean, he's done. You don't leave Alabama after you've won that many championships to go build something elsewhere at 72 years old. And I do not blame the guy one bit, despite the fact that he's been a thorn in our side for 15 years. I mean, really even longer if you go back to the LSU days. I mean, you've won everything you can. You've got a nice $18 million beach house in Jupiter, Florida that you can go spend your time at, maybe get a cushy job doing game day or something on the weekends to stay around the sport. Why not do it? Go play golf every day and enjoy all that money that you made. Stop calling high school recruits and college transfer kids in the portal. That life does not sound that fun. Enjoy the money that you made. I don't blame you one bit.
Not at all. And obviously, I think most Tennessee fans are just thankful that this actually happened. That you no longer have to face him, that there's an actual chance that the Alabama football program will come back down to earth. Obviously, we'll talk about where that might be going here in just a second. But yeah, this was really one of those things where you knew that, time makes no exceptions for anybody. Like this day was coming at some point, but it almost felt like that's not really going to happen. Like it was one of those things where you're just like, he's just going to keep his iron stranglehold on this sport and keep his foot on all of our necks forever. And, finally it actually did happen. And it's I didn't even know how to feel. Like I had been, I want to say I was driving home yesterday and hadn't seen it. I wasn't, I'm a responsible person. I don't text while I drive. And so I hadn't seen it. And then I looked and I was like, oh my gosh. Nick Saban retired. And I had to go check. I was like, is this
Oh
actually
yeah,
real?
it was
Is
one
this
of
a
those.
fake account? Holy cow. Yeah. I mean, it was one where you got a double, you got a triple check to see if that's the real Chris Lowe. And I was beside myself. I mean, it genuinely, it it was a shock. I mean, I tried to think of some parallel to where it was just like the I don't even know what the right word is. Relief and just the kind of the weight of his menace going away. And it's, the only people that actually enjoyed are Alabama fans, and finally the rest of college football can be like, okay, there's one less thing. Yeah, we still got to deal with Kirby. Kirby's still out there and he's still doing his whole thing, but like now it's a whole new landscape. I mean, this is a totally different thing. Obviously, this is Tennessee's primary rival in football, and so it really is crazy. And I don't want to say that I hope whoever comes in next completely ruins the program and drives it into the ground, but that's exactly what I hope happens. That is what I am praying on their downfall, and I would be lying if I said anything other than that. That's just
Yeah,
my
and
feeling.
we joked earlier over text, group text that we're in that if only Jeremy Pruitt had stayed at Alabama as the defensive coordinator for 8 or so years, like Kirby Smart did before he took the Georgia job, he'd be right there. I mean, he would be the guy that you'd hand it over to, and he would drive it straight into the ground. Like I said, instead, he drove Tennessee straight into the ground. Fortunately, Josh Heupel was able to revive it, and as you mentioned, thank goodness Heupel beat this guy before he retired because Alabama fans are going to have plenty of bragging rights, and it's going to take a lot of wins to undo what's happened, since 2006, 2007. But at least they don't have that. At least, if Josh Heupel goes and wins a national championship, at least they can't throw back, hey, he never beat Nick Saban, because he did. And he's, the only Tennessee coach that beat Saban while he was at Alabama. So he has that, on his resume. Thank goodness he got that. But at the same time, I think this kind of increases the pressure on Josh Heupel now, because that Alabama game goes from, you've kind of had this built-in excuse. Not that anybody, at Tennessee or any other program would use the word excuse, but for fans, you could excuse losing to Alabama. It was the greatest dynasty of our generation, the greatest coach of our generation. Well, nobody else has done it. How can you expect this guy to do it? So you kind of had that to fall back on. Now that he's gone, I mean, that becomes a game now. Like in 2024, you can't lose that game. I don't care who the coach is that takes over. And moving forward, if the SEC goes with the 1-7 permanent schedule set up where you have one permanent opponent and seven rotating, Tennessee would be the only program in the SEC that plays Alabama every single year. And that, not only do you have to start beating them at home, you got to start beating them in Tuscaloosa. Every graduating class basically has to have at least one win in Tuscaloosa, I feel like, moving forward. So that's a lot of pressure, I feel like, that kind of gets added to Josh Heupel's play. And that's a good thing. I think he can handle it, but you can't lose those games anymore.
Yeah, it's a fair point, since you don't have to play Georgia every single year now. It's going to be in every other. That is kind of it's obviously you still want to be Georgia, but it's not imperative like it was before, where that was a benchmark. Everybody goes like, what is Tennessee's coach's record against Georgia, Alabama, Florida? Like, you can basically take Georgia off that list. In some sense, I guess you can take Florida off that list now, because that's going to be in every other year now too. So, well, we don't exactly know the structure quite yet.
Yeah, we're not
But
positive yet.
yeah,
Could be.
but yeah, but I agree. It is this weird thing where, yeah, suddenly the expectation is going to be like, well, Saban, the reason that Alabama won all these games is suddenly gone, and especially if Alabama has a big flight of players now, where a lot of guys leave in the transfer portal. I mean, that's going to be expected of everybody that's kind of above the halfway point in the SEC rankings, is going to kind of be like, oh yeah, you better compete with Alabama.
Yeah, it's
There's
not
really,
unique to Tennessee. I just
no,
think it hits Tennessee a little harder because of that rivalry,
yes,
because of the fact that they'll, play them every year like that. That's gonna be a tough one.
and I mean, this has got to be the most unenviable job for whoever is gonna take over at Alabama. I mean, as much as it does, I guess, in that sense, like, ratchet up that pressure on Heupel a little bit, to be like, okay, the door's open, because that was always the feeling against Alabama. Like, you could look and even, let's say, like 2015, you had a lead with like 3 minutes left in that 2015 game in Tuscaloosa, but you still had the feeling, you're just like, it's Saban. This guy, he just figures it out. That's what Saban does. That's why he's the greatest of all time, is that he figures it out, and they win the game. And it was Georgia in this SEC championship game. They somehow find a way to win those games. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that it's why he is who he is. That element is gone now, and so this really, whoever takes this job for Saban with that legacy on the table and everything. I mean, this is what Pat Summitt won 8 national championships. Saban won 7. I guess the only thing that he didn't do effectively, it's two different sports, obviously, but Pat Summitt was like one of the true pioneers of women's college basketball. I don't know that I would call Saban a pioneer of the sport, but he is probably the greatest coach per record and number of championships to ever coach this sport. And like who is going to be the sacrificial who's going to be the sacrifice here? Who's going to step up and be that guy that has to take whatever beating comes when he loses that first game to whoever it is? It's going to, I mean, you talk about the most thankless job in America. I am so ready to see what happens here. It's going to be a freaking blast, man.
Yeah, I think Dan Lanning decided to stay at Oregon, which I don't know. There's some rumors that Alabama really wasn't even that super interested in Dan Lanning, or maybe they hadn't even got that far down the road yet. Because Nick Saban reportedly it was kind of like back and forth yesterday on whether or not he was going to do this, if he was going to go through with it. So this isn't like some message board conspiracy theory where Alabama's had a coach in place for weeks and they kind of know what they're going to do, and they're going to go through this whole charade of a coaching search. I mean, they're going to have to go find somebody. And I think you're right. I think a lot of coaches now understand. I mean, you see how fast dudes get fired at these programs, these big name programs, if you don't come through. I mean, like Dan Mullen at Florida is the perfect example. He won a couple of SEC East Division titles, and he's an analyst on ESPN now, and his successor's not doing anything there so far. I think people understand, like, it's really hard to have success in college football, and if you've got a good thing going, why jump ship? I think Lane Kiffin would jump at it because it's Lane. I don't know if Alabama's going to jump at Lane Kiffin. I don't know about the whole Mike Norvell stuff at Florida State, and I don't know that I'd have to see that one to believe it. I think he'd be a tough sell, honestly. And I know that the talk has been that Alabama fans don't really want him, and I think Dabo I think he would be the one that would make that jump. I think you've heard him talk about not being appreciated. He kind of went on that rant with that radio show, with that caller about maybe I'll just go somewhere else or something like that. He's won a couple national championships. He's an Alabama guy, obviously played there, was a GA there before Saban was there, and he has the ego. Like, he has the ego that says, I can go to Alabama and win. I won at Clemson. I can go to Alabama and win. It'll be even easier. I'll get better recruits. I think Alabama might be hesitant because of the NIL stuff that he hasn't really embraced. I think I saw somewhere where Clemson's like the only team, one of the only Power 5 teams or ACC teams or something without a like transfer portal commitment so far this offseason, which is wild. Like, it's really tough. Though I don't see a lot of players leaving Clemson either. Kind of that cult thing going on there where you just, I don't know, it's like a Stockholm syndrome. You get in there and Dabo, I don't know, he kidnaps you and you. Anyway, I could see Dabo, though, wanting to make that jump. And I think there's scenarios where Alabama kind of has to go with him. If all these other people are like, no, we're not going to go near that. Steve Sarkisian, like, why leave Texas? That's one of the best jobs in college football. You have all the resources you need. You have Arch Manning. You beat Alabama. You went to the playoff this year. You don't need to leave Texas. Like, that's a great job. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to take a psycho, whoever it is. And it might be Kiffin. He has motivation. Ole Miss is not it. You're gonna hit your head up against the Ole Miss ceiling always. They are just not. They are not, and they will never be, in my personal opinion, a program that will break through and be a perennial powerhouse.
No.
They just don't have.
He seems more like LSU. If Brian Kelly goes to Michigan, if Harbaugh leaves, which I think is a very realistic possibility, Kiffin to LSU to me makes perfect sense.
I agree.
And I think you could win a championship there. I mean, Ed Ogeron won a championship there, and Lane Kiffin's a better coach than Ed Ogeron. So I think he could do some damage there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kiffin has done. He's hit what is the ability of that program. It's 11-2. That was one of the best seasons that they've had in however long, and great. And that's Ole Miss. And so I could see him having motivation to go to Alabama, to go to somewhere where you don't have that limitation. Sarkisian, why would you leave? Kalen DeBoer, why would you leave Washington?
Yeah.
There's
he's a
zero
West Coast.
motivation.
He seems like a West Coast type of guy, low key, like the people that go in that, like a Chris Peterson type. Why do that?
I don't see that at all. Obviously, Lanning's already off the board. Like I go down the list, and ultimately I go, it's kind of like you. If it's not one of these guys that would kind of have motivation, like a Kiffin, like maybe a Dabo, like somebody that motivation and is enough of a complete egomaniac, sociopath to actually go take on this job. Who like if they, let's say they fall down past that set of candidates, like where do you go?
Eli
That's what
Drinkwitz.
I've
Eli Drinkwitz.
maybe.
That would
I
be
mean,
wild. Please do
yeah,
that. Please.
and like Drinkwitz. I mean, if you're at Drinkwitz's level, you're talking Heupel at that point. Like they've.
Yeah. I
I
think
think
Heupel's smart enough, though. Heupel's a smart guy. Like, he's got ego. Everybody has ego. But his comes from a different place where it's kind of this, I'm going to show you, it's this pettiness that we've seen on display
yeah,
plenty. Uh, I think he understands what a lot of these other coaches understand. This isn't something unique to Heupel. I think he understands what Dan Lanning understands and some of these other guys, that you're in a thankless, hopeless situation there if you do not go 14-1 or something in your
yeah.
first year, or 13-2, or get to the playoff. You're done if you don't after like 2 years.
Without a doubt. I mean, that is going to be the expectation when you look at it. And I mean, we can say it because we watched it with that Lady Vol basketball team. It was the greatest of all time, and then you replace the greatest of all time, and you're always, even now, we benchmark like this is the Lady Vols. This losing that's happening with Kelly Harper, like that's not working. You have a ton of fans calling for her to be done, and that, that's real time and a complete other conversation. But
Yeah.
like you just are perpetually going to have those expectations until you get far enough removed, and Lord knows how long it'll take for that expectation to wear off at Alabama. And so yeah, if I I think they'll ultimately land with one of these more top tier guys, because yeah, when you get down past it, like yeah, they're not going to go for Hype. They're not going to do that. Heupel's not going to have it. I don't think that they would go for Drinkwitz. I don't think that they would do almost any of that. But then you look like they have too much pride to go for like a coordinator. That's I Georgia did it because that was their native son
Yeah.
with Kirby, and it was a whole different, and he came from a national championship winning, long tenure time in Alabama. Like that's a different thing altogether. Like there wasn't a given successor like Pruitt theoretically would have been. That guy's not out there. And so where do you go? And again, I
Unless
hope
they
that it
end up
gets down there.
Unless they land on like a Bill O'Brien, maybe that's a safety
Maybe.
net there. I mean, he was at Penn State briefly. I still think he's one that's going to prefer the NFL anyway. But he is a bit of a control freak. He had that going on in Houston, which was ultimately his undoing. But he could be a safety net. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this wasn't a situation like when Bob Stoops retired and he had this all set up, and Lincoln Riley stepped right into that role. Uh, you don't have that at all, and it's
No.
surprising because I thought Saban would wait until he had that. I always figured when Nick Saban retired that it would be a very Bob Stoops type situation where it was like, okay,
Me too.
he's going to retire and they're going to announce the new coach at the same time. I always expected that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's exactly how I thought it would go down, and it's just not. He just checked out, man, and it's from the sound of it. You heard I listened to interviews with different like national media folks. I mean, and you said it there. I think this was in question up to like yesterday. There wasn't complete certainty, and then suddenly, this is dropped in Greg Burns' lap. And so I hope that this just turns into a disaster. Is that bad karma to wish that for Alabama? What I know that Alabama fans wish that on Tennessee constantly, so they can kiss it as far
Look,
as I'm
we've dealt.
concerned.
We've prepaid on
Oh,
bad karma at this point.
exactly. I can say whatever I want after the
Yeah,
last 20
we
years.
have credit.
Exactly. Yeah. I can say all of that, and I still have room left to talk there as far as that goes. Yeah. So I hope it just turns into a disaster. I don't think it will. As I said, I don't think it will. Greg Burns a good AD, but man, it would be so great if it did. Oh
Yeah,
man,
the
and
one.
we'll talk about that.
It would take a while, I think, to collapse it. It'd be like a slow decline. Whoever goes there, although the portal does make it more difficult now, I guess that is the one variable that hasn't been there in the past when we've seen like Orion Day take over for Ohio State and these brands that were just like self-sufficient. Like you just show up and flash your Ohio State emblem and you get a 5-star recruit. I mean, Alabama's going to have a lot of that too. But when you show up and things aren't going your way, or you kind of see where things are heading, you don't like the coach, you can just leave now, and you can do it twice. So even the transfers that are transferred in, it's very easy to lose like there's really nothing that prevents a team from losing their entire roster overnight at this point. I mean, that's obviously unlikely to happen, but it theoretically it could happen to Alabama right now. I don't think that's what'll happen, but there's going to be guys. I mean, through these bat channels, I wrote about it today. Like, and I know we're fixing to talk about this a little bit, but I would be figuring out a way to get in contact with Caden Proctor, an offensive tackle, left tackle at Alabama that started every game as a true freshman, and give him a blank check and
100%.
figure it out. I don't care. John Campbell, Lance Hurd, kid from Mississippi State, whoever it is, you get that guy in and figure out the other part after. Because if you don't, Georgia's going to go after him. Florida's going to go after him. You know, the teams you're competing with are going to have that guy, and he's better than anybody on your roster.
Yeah, I'll say it again. I hope, and I said this when the transfer portal first opened up, I want to see somebody hit the transfer portal and the thing that is said, oh, he's going into the transfer portal, his expected landing spot is Tennessee. I want to see that. Tamper, cheat, be in there and do what you got to do to win in this recruiting landscape. I want to see it. So, and I don't think we're gonna. That's a different conversation, and we're gonna touch on just a little bit here. But yeah, we'll see. But that's, we just had to come on, talk a little bit about Saban. But let's finish with a little bit of this recruiting talk right after I tell you about the great sponsor of this video. That, of course, is Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some have stayed the same. Farm Bureau has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. So plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans, shout out to them for always being a friend to the show. And then let's finish with this. I was really, really hoping, because we heard last night the message board rumors where that Tennessee had all but locked down Lance Hurd from LSU, the offensive lineman from LSU, that I want to say would be when speaking technically about his ranking coming out of high school, it would be Heupel's second highest recruit ever. Just based on, pre-college ranking. And that, that news swirled around. Oh man, I think they really did it. They may have really landed. And then there's been no announcement today. And I'm not saying end of the world. The announcement still might be coming. It's just now 5 p.m. on Thursday, but it's hello. Where's the announcement? Can we go ahead and get that? And we don't need to talk circles around anything, especially when literally in 5 minutes, as far as we know, this news could be coming out. I was really hoping we had a real stretch there where we were getting commitments live during the show, but I don't think that's going to happen today. But in your mind, is this a done deal? Do you think it's really happening?
It seems to be trending that way. I don't think Ole Miss is it's Ole Miss really. I don't think they're in it quite like they think in Oklahoma and Tennessee. And it just seems like the most momentum's with Tennessee. There's a huge need. I don't know if obviously NIL is at play here. I think there's some position stuff at play. I don't know if you saw yesterday some of those tweets from John Campbell, some cryptic tweets about. It was hard to really sift through what it could possibly mean, but there's money and changes and things like that. Seems to be like the feeling might be that that Campbell might be asked to move to the right side and Hurd play left tackle. Maybe they're still sifting through all that, which to me, like, I hate that that's even a thing because you don't even have the kid through practice yet. Like, who knows what's going to work better? You moved Darnell Wright from left tackle in favor of Gerald Mincey and Jeremiah Crawford at left tackle in 2022. And Darnell Wright, who's the better offensive lineman, you moved to right tackle. And it worked out, obviously. He didn't give up a sack all year. Top 10 pick, had a great rookie season with the Bears. Really looks like a foundational piece for that franchise moving forward. So that's all the evidence you need to show to a recruit. Like, just trust us. If you're better here, we're going to put you here. That's where you can best help the team. And if you're helping the team in the best way, you're going to help yourself in the best way possible too. So if Darnell Wright was better on the right side, how do you know that Lance Hurd is going to be better on the left side and John Campbell on the right side, or vice versa? Like, I don't feel like you can know that. And on the flip side, if you're a player, why are you even getting held up on that? You go compete and win the spot. Like, any real competitor shouldn't want any of that just given to them. You want the opportunity. Yes, of course, you have to have the opportunity. And I do think that's important. But if you're talking about flipping left and right, and the way these offenses are these days, even in the NFL, with the mobile quarterbacks, the whole blindside thing, you don't have these as many traditional, just straight seven step drops where you're relying on your left tackle. I mean, you're moving around the pocket, you're on the run. It's not as big of a thing anymore. They get paid. Right tackles get paid in the NFL too now.
Yeah.
I don't see the big fuss about all that. I think that's the silliest part of all this.
It's got to just be coming down to money at this point. I mean, realistically, I look at it and I think probably skill wise, I might let this kid have a little bit of that kind of an air of like, all right, we'll really give you a shot at left tackle if you come here, whatever, just because. Well, we haven't seen him play, no, but purely off of ratings and evaluations, I mean, he's better than anybody that you have on that side of the long, Cooper Mays, who is just your stalwart dude at center. Like, I'm not going to bring him in to replace Cooper Mays or something like that. But outside of that, I mean, what? I got to think that this is going to be the top talent that you have on this line. So I agree, but I also go, do what you got to do to get this talent in the door. And then also, and Percy Lewis, to the kid from Mississippi State, especially if you don't get Lance Hurd, that's an absolute must. And I think it's anticipated that Lewis is gonna visit this weekend, I think. But I don't know what's gonna happen there. I am pro. Give this dude the bag. You need him. you gotta have him. Should you let him dictate what position he plays? Probably not. But do I also think that he's probably going to be the most talented dude on your offensive line when he shows up? Also, probably, yes. So it's a two-edged sword there. So, but there's that. And then the final thing here before we bounce, fun little piece of news. Since Saban retired at Alabama, you were fighting Alabama for George McIntyre, 5-star quarterback. And it was kind of like, oh, he's leaning Alabama, he's leaning Tennessee, he's leaning. Well, Steve Wiltfong at 247, within hours of Saban, the Saban retirement announcement coming out, gives a crystal ball for George McIntyre to come to Tennessee. So that's fun. Hopefully they seal the deal there and you have your quarterback for the future, even after Nico. That would be really nice, but I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Zach.
Yeah, that was my first thought too. Like last night after all this news hit, or Wednesday night, like this pretty much guarantees that you're getting George McIntyre because it was LSU, Alabama, and Tennessee, and LSU got their 5-star guy. So it was really between Tennessee and Alabama. And the thing is like, this isn't, okay, Nick Saban retires, so George McIntyre is just going to go to Tennessee. Like, you're getting him by default because Saban retired. Like, it was trending toward Tennessee before this. Yep. The feeling was that McIntyre was going to land at Tennessee. Now, you never know, especially in recruiting, especially with Nick Saban. But now the narrative kind of goes to, well, one, I guess if you're Alabama, it can like, well, you only got him because Saban retired. And also from the Tennessee side of things, as a fan, it would have been really fun to go head-to-head with Nick Saban for a 5-star quarterback and beat him for that 5-star quarterback. Because you didn't really do that with Nico. I mean, they were in the, obviously Nico had interest from everybody, but down at the end, it really wasn't Alabama there. They had, they had other stuff going on. But this would have been head-to-head, like on ESPN beats out Alabama for, I'm sure ESPN probably would have rated McIntyre as like the number 35 quarterback in the country just because he went to Tennessee like they did Nico, but that's beside the point. I think that's, that's kind of petty, I guess, but it still would have been kind of something fun there.
Yeah, obviously I want the transfers to all come from Alabama, but that they have to first get into the transfer portal, and that's a whole different thing. But if you could have like this immediate win, essentially over Alabama, just from Saban retiring, incredible, all the better. On top of the fact that the coach of the team that you hate the most is finally riding off into the sunset. I'm all for it, and hopefully Hurd comes. Hopefully Percy Lewis. Hopefully George McIntyre. That is the right name, right? I'm thinking of that right off the top of my head. That's that kid's name, right? Lewis.
I think so. I'm pretty sure Lewis.
Yeah. That is.
There's
Okay,
so many
good.
portal names at this point. They
I
all
know.
flow together. It's it's just a whirlwind of information constantly. January used to be one of the quietest months in college football, and now it's one of probably the busiest. I mean, this week, NFL, college combined, since Christmas has been the most like the busiest, craziest part of the sports calendar you'll see all year.
Yeah, it really has been a nut house, but that's it. That's the midweek segment. Charlie Burrows, Zacharian, shout out to Farm Bureau Health Plans for sponsoring. Thank you for listening to everybody out there who gives us a listen every week. We appreciate it. We will be back Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Supposed to be a little winter storm rolling in that night, I think. Maybe that day, maybe Monday day. I don't know. I looked at the weather earlier today because it's supposed to, apparently they close schools here or something because it's windy tomorrow. I don't really know. But yeah. Oh, we didn't talk any about Vrabel. But we're going long. I wanted to drop that in.
The Patriots.
He is.
I watched that clip again, the full clip of where he was at the Patriots celebration. I think I'd just seen little bits and pieces of it, but I saw it on ESPN or NFL Network, I think, this morning. And wow, like that was very telling. If we really would have, I guess we kind of all, me and you kind of figured this was going to be the outcome. I know there's a lot of people in local Titans media and some that just, I don't know, they had blinders on or something, but we kind of felt like this was going to happen. That speech was clear. You don't say that stuff while you're employed by another team as their head coach and talk about it's. I've been to a lot of places. You haven't been to a lot of places. You've been to like 4 NFL franchises. You played for the Chiefs briefly, the Patriots. You coached with the Texans. I think he was brief Steelers maybe early in his career, which, they've won Super Bowls. So you're not talking about them. What? No. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And to that point, Amy Adams, she referenced that as one of the things that really kind of drew her concern as far as Vrabel went. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've been out on Vrabel for 3 years. I wanted him fired the second that he lost in the first round of the playoffs, and I went, this is malarkey 2.0. Turns out I was 100. Excuse me to all. Let me just say this to all Titans media and all Titans fans who doubted me. I was 100% right, and you were not. So there,
the whole thing about
everybody out there.
Who are you gonna get that's as good as Vrabel? And I'm like, well, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that can go 6-11. A lot. There's a lot.
Who can win 6 games in 6 of your last 24? Oh, I don't know. Most of them.
I mean, Arthur Smith did better 24? Than that in Atlanta.
Good Lord, he sucked this year. And I called it from that far away, and everybody is, oh, you're stupid. You don't know football. You know, oh, I don't. Yeah. God, I can't stand the most condescending media corps in America. Just shut up.
He'll get another job, and
don't even get me started.
If he goes to New England, it's not that's not a better situation at this point than the Titans. I mean, they're kind of a very similar spot.
It's worse.
I'm not a Will Levis guy, but I'd rather have Will Levis than Matt Jones and Bailey Zappi or whoever's up there taking snaps. So it's not going to go well for him up there either.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, to all the Titans media that, couldn't believe that this would really happen, and they just I couldn't believe they love Mike Vrabel so much. Titans media and a lot of Titans fans. I mean, that was surprising. I would just say, sit this one out. You know. Anyway, Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, thank you so much to everybody who listens. Seriously, it means the world. I got my blood pressure up talking about the Titans there at the end. Oh boy. No, seriously. Thanks everybody. That really is it for us. We appreciate it. We will talk to y'all on Monday.
See you guys later.